All right, gentlemen, welcome to the June 2023 MSMF Wealth Management Client Podcast. Jay, I'm surprised you're here because I figured you'd be managing the Cardinals by now.
Hey, all these ropes getting a little short.
I do believe that you might have to do precisely what Mozeliak would tell you if you became the manager, which is one of the reasons why I guess Marmel's not going to get fired.
I guess so.
So anyway, I digress. But the Cardinals are only, I believe, 8.5 or 9 games out as we prepare or run this podcast. Cody, if we gain one game in the standings, every 10 games will be there right at the end.
I think it's doable. What were the odds again, Mark?
Oh, so the odds, gentlemen, of hitting the trifecta of winning the division, winning the pennant, and winning the World Series, 273 to 1.
All right.
Chris, behind the scenes over there, how much you putting on that?
$5.
$5? How about $500, man? That's a big payoff. That's a couple $100,000 payoff, dude. Or $100,000. So anyway, sorry. Today, what we're going to talk about is something, gentlemen, that we talk about all the time in client meetings. But I know we haven't done a podcast specifically on it. So I thought we'd dive into some of this because we're going to talk about, managing the risk to our clients' overall financial blueprint. And as I mentioned, we talk about this in meetings, but there are a little bit deeper dive things I'd like to get into today because I think some of these risks that our clients face, sometimes there's not a lot of information running around out there about the risk, or quite frankly, the risk is just it's an oversight or it's ignored. So we're going to talk about that. The risks we're going to talk about today, we're going to briefly mention the one we always talk about, and that's portfolio risk. But we're also going to talk about health and disability risk, Jay. Cody, we're going to talk a little bit about the risk of premature death, which I think everybody's got a pretty good handle on, but it's important to kind of go back and talk about it. And then, quite frankly, things that we talk about in our meetings, there are legal risks that our clients deal with on a day-by-day basis. And just to make my friends at compliance very happy, we're not attorneys, but certainly we manage these legal risks ourselves in our personal lives, and we share that information with our clients for them to try to do the same. And by the same token, we're not property and casualty agents, but we certainly know based on our own property and casualty coverages how to share that information with clients, and we'll get into that today. Again, what are the risks of the financial blueprint? The most common one's the portfolio, and I'll just mention it briefly. We talk about this every time when we're with clients, and we are using a newer tool called Riskalyze that helps our clients walk through a more dynamic risk assessment. So many of you have either already gone through this with us or you will in the near future. It's a much more, I think, current way to look at risk in a portfolio. And really what we're looking at is what's the allocation of portfolio, what kind of risk does it present or not present. Jay, you reminded me there's also tax risk, which we talk about all the time with our clients. Excuse me. And there's time risks in terms of a client's portfolio, their IRAs, their qualified plans. There's deadlines associated with those things all over the place, and they start to get a little bit more severe and important when clients retire. But we talk about that all the time. So let's morph beyond just portfolio risk in our financial blueprint to, Jay, I want to start with you and the health and disability risk. Could you kind of tell everyone really what's there, what they need to be concerned about? And I know you got some really eye-opening stats that you're going to share with us.
Yeah, so let's start with one that, everybody, it's on top of everybody's mind, and that's going to be some sort of health or health coverage or, the cost of an illness if you're not healthy, basically, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the biggest risks of, and we're trying to help manage the different insurances and the different coverages. And as you get close to 65, now you're having to deal with Medicare and all those fun things too. So just the cost of being healthy even sometimes can be kind of expensive. But that's definitely a risk worth mentioning. And then kind of on the flip side would be, well, what if something happens to you, right? And that would be like the disability type thing. Mm-hmm. So the stats are really going to be around disability. I got these from MetroDI.com and our Social Security website. A couple stats for you, right? So number one, if you are 20 years old, 1 in 4 20-year-olds in the workforce will be have some sort of event where they are disabled for at least 1 year before they're age 65.
Holy cow.
That's a crazy number to me.
That's
and
a
to think
giant
about
number, it sounds like.
That's a crazy number to think about. Another one for you. Let's see. And again, this is all around disabilities. There is an accident every second that causes someone to miss work.
Oh, wow.
To put into perspective, every 4 minutes there's an accident, a fatal accident. So 1 second versus 4 minutes. So that tells me this is probably an overlooked coverage.
Right.
Oftentimes, if you're not thinking about disability anyway, right? So it's often included in benefits packages through work, but if you're self-employed, you may not. So this is kind of a reminder that maybe that should be a conversation for you, right?
100%.
And then the last one, kind of related to that, I mentioned packages of benefits. A lot of people think, oh, well, I've got workers' comp. That'll take care of me. Here's another stat for you. Less than 1% of disabilities that happen are due to a work-related accident. So it's something that happened outside of work that workers' comp's not going to help with.
Sure.
So that to me is just eye-opening. Holy cow, that's a pretty big risk that sometimes, you don't think about it, right? Because no one wants to think about that. And then the last one, if I kind of shift out of any type of disablement or disability, is looking out of some sort of chronic care event. And so this is something that we really talk about later in a financial blueprint, because that can often be the biggest risk once you're getting closer to your retirement years, right? Because at that point, you might need to go into a facility. You might need someone to come into your house and help with different things. That can be pretty costly. And if you don't have a plan for how you're going to take care of those, then that cost can be a pretty big risk.
Right. Yeah, and I would say, Jay, that one of the ways that we can help our clients is, and we remind them all the time, when we get to open enrollment period in the late September, October, November timeframe, is, and I know you guys do this, review the employee benefits that everyone has to make sure they're taking full advantage of those. Mm-hmm. And I also know not every company out there offers disability coverage, so then we're also looking at that for clients. But it is by far and away the number one risk for our working clients up until the point they retire.
Right.
And it's funny because, Cody's going to talk to us about the risk of premature death. I think everybody gets that. What people don't get is that we need some type of protection for your paycheck if there's an adverse health event or an accident or something. Mm-hmm. And the stats are alarming, is all I can say.
Mind blowing. We talk about insurance all the time. I didn't even realize that the stats were that big.
So. Yeah, they're scary. And I think I think it was the website that also said that if you're under 35, there's a 1 in 3 chance before you're 65 that you're going to have some type of event that's going to cause you to miss work and be some level of disabled.
Right.
That's
crazy.
It's nuts. So with such a happy kickoff, it is a risk that we want to talk about, want to help everyone through. I don't want to transfer over to you, Cody, and I think a lot of our clients understand, particularly our working clients, especially those with young children, what the risk of premature death is. Mm-hmm. In terms of those financial obligations. Why don't you walk us through managing that risk in someone's financial blueprint?
Yeah, I mean, the premature death risk, especially if you're under 60, obviously isn't as daring as the disability insurance, but it's a risk that certainly has a ripple effect through the family, right? So, number one thing when you're looking at the risk of premature death is what exactly do you want to cover? And usually it's a loss of income, over extrapolate that over a period of time. You're not really insuring, a lot of people won't insure for, I want my family to be set off for life and my spouse to never have to work again, because the cost of insuring that type of thing would be rather expensive. But I want to make sure that my income, or it gives my spouse the time to go in and find a job and kind of set in for the new life. Maybe I want to cover my kids' colleges. Maybe I want to cover some marriage, or the cost of marriage for my kid down the road. I mean, a lot of things can go into that part. I think a very underutilized area of people's access to insurance is through their group coverage. Either you don't know about it, or you're only doing the bare minimum of maybe one-time salary. Usually, it's a certain factor of your income. Some go up to 5. I've seen some go up all the way to 10. Mm-hmm. Usually don't have to get, the process of getting the actual insurance. You don't have to get underwritten for it. kind of just pay a base pay. So law of large numbers, it's a lot less expensive most of the time to get group insurance and to go get your individual coverage. The bad thing with most group coverages that if you go to a different job, you can't move that with you, right? The portability of it. So that's why it's always important to have some sort of individual coverage on yourself as well. And just because maybe, I think also a lot of people don't even want to bring it up. Maybe they've had an illness in the past or a health event, and they just don't think they can get the coverage, which is absolutely not true. We've had people with cancer, with heart attacks, things like that. You can still get coverage. Right. It's just...
I'm an example of that.
Something to always think about. You're not automatically knocked out of the pool for it. Right. Going on that too, premature death, and we run into this a lot where this is probably the most, the estate for somebody is, I think, the most confusing for people, and just kind of in the back, like, oh, nothing, if that happens to me, everything will kind of work out. Well, it usually doesn't kind of work out. You have to deal with probate. The process of something going through probate is not easy for the surviving family. It takes time, it takes money, and it becomes public info. Right. Also, just because you have a will does not avoid probate.
Well, it guarantees it.
Yeah, it guarantees it. It guarantees that it will go through. The money or assets will end up where you want it to, but it's going to go through probate, right? So, all the time do we get, well, do I need a trust? Well, I don't know. It kind of depends on your situation. You don't have to have a lot of money to have a need for a trust. If you want a certain amount of money to go through to your grandkids, or they can't have it at a certain age, you need a trust. Or a lot of young people with families that have minors, right? And, the easiest type of thing to at least get the assets where you want to avoid trust is having a transfer on death or a payable on death on your titling of your assets or your investments. Making sure on your 401ks you're looking through that your beneficiaries are set up right. Especially if you go through a life event, you get a divorce, you get a marriage, you need to update them, right? So those are a lot of things we'll touch on, but I think in the back of the mind it kind of gets forgotten about a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say, just to delineate before we toss it over to Jay, the premature death considerations, because you kind of referenced this, and I like to say it this way, particularly when you're talking about life insurance, and even when you're talking about disability or disability insurance, either one of these risks, it's not about somebody becoming financially independent.
Right.
It's about somebody becoming financially stable, right? If you guys both work, you're married, you have kids, your wives are successful professionals. If one of you were disabled yesterday, that loss of income is going to have an impact on your family, right? If one of you were gone yesterday, that loss of your life is going to have an impact on your family. And the objective is to make sure your respective families are stable, that from a financial perspective, you got to make sure we can pay the mortgage, income's taken care of, kids are taken care of to whatever extent that you guys would want that to happen. So it's really about financial stability, not about somebody immediately retiring because someone's gone, and nobody's retiring if somebody's disabled. That's a game changer if you just think about what happens to lifestyle, right? And then, as you referenced, Cody, that leads into some legal issues, right? We talk about the titling all the time. Again, we're not attorneys, but we certainly can help our clients get all dressed up and go to an attorney, right, when the time comes. And we see it all the time with our clients. We just had a client in here yesterday. The husband and the wife, they have a trust. They've had it for a while. How much stuff do you think's in it? How much has been retitled?
Oh, they forgot to put the stuff in it.
Right.
Huh?
They got a box, but there's nothing in the box, right? So now we're going through trying to clean this stuff up, help them retitle everything, and it's important, and it's a huge risk to your financial blueprint. You reference probate. There's all sorts of other potholes that go with that, but the legal aspect of the risk to a financial blueprint is huge. Now, Jay, there's other legal aspects beyond titling. What are some of those that we want our clients to kind of pay attention to and ask themselves about?
Yeah, one of them that's pretty big, and most of us have, and it's a giant machine that mangles things, vehicles, right? In which case they can do a ton of damage, and not that you even did anything wrong. Stuff happens, right? And so that's a pretty big legal liability to keep in mind, and injuries to others and property damage and all those things. Those numbers can get staggeringly large quickly. And so that's we keep addressing these risks, and most of these risks have an insurance coverage to go with it, right? So right now I'm talking about car insurance, obviously, but also homeowners insurance. This is on top of my mind right now because I just put a pool in my backyard.
Oh, big risk.
I got to change my insurance on that, right? So different things like that just need to be kind of reminded, hey, what kind of risks do you have? And then one thing that I think maybe some people don't take advantage of that they probably should is what's called umbrella coverage. And most of the time it's paired with homeowners insurance, right? But it's what happens if those numbers get larger than your normal coverages. You can have the umbrella coverage come in and kind of take care of it too, right? And it has other benefits as well. So that's definitely something to reach out to an insurance agent and talk to about. But that's something that is another risk that this insurance coverage can help kind of come in and sweep.
Absolutely.
Other risks that need to be mentioned, one of them would be identity theft. We just had a bunch of bad emails come in, just our firm that we were talking about just last week, right, about impersonating different people. And then we're not in tax season right now, but that's usually when a huge thing of fraud pops up with people stealing their Social Security returns and trying to run in there and grab their refunds. And so just identity theft, another one that, another risk you need to keep thinking about. Related to the emails would be cyber attacks or cyber threats, right? And making sure that you have different passwords protected, or making sure that your accounts are, protected in case of some sort of cyber attack. So risks all around us.
There are risks everywhere. A couple more of those. There's, the bankruptcy risk.
Yeah.
The some of these other issues up above can force us into some bankruptcy issues. The biggest concern from my perspective would be identity theft. Some of these bad actors out there grab your identity, they get your Social Security number. You could find yourself in a world of hurt, and sadly in a bankruptcy court, right? A couple things that we talk about with our clients all the time that is part of the legal risks and ways to address it with your financial blueprint are healthcare powers of attorney and durable powers of attorney. The durable power of attorney is that something happens to Cody yesterday, right? And he's going to be in La La Land for 6 months in St. Louis County. His bride doesn't automatically have the right to sign his name, right? She'd have to go down to the courthouse and get authority to do that unless Cody has a durable power of attorney that makes her an agent that is allowed to sign his name. The healthcare power, all right, you're hurt yesterday. Your bride Megan doesn't have the right to immediately make healthcare decisions for you while you're in La La Land. Imagine how crazy that is. So you need a healthcare power of attorney where you designate Megan as your agent to make your healthcare decisions. Those are giant risks, and we've seen real situations where our clients didn't have those, even though we've urged them, and it creates a cluster. You know what, right? So there are a lot of risks to our financial blueprint that go beyond the traditional portfolio risk. Cody, final thoughts for our clients?
Yeah, touch base on the insurance part. Use the group coverage to your advantage. I think it's so underutilized. The titling of the assets, I think a big one that always seems to be forgotten is how they titled their house in the first place. And their bank accounts.
Right.
And that's usually, the bank accounts are usually the first type of accounts people need to get access to because of the liquidity of them.
Right.
Would be my biggest takeaway. And kind of going off, Jay, the cyber threats, I think that's a newer one that's come into the equation. But especially if you're a small business owner, you probably need to look seriously to add that into your repertoire of insurance products that you probably have for your business.
Right. And one thing on titling, I know we see it all the time. Right? They get the trust. Husband and wife are busy. They got 2.3 kids and 9.9 soccer games every weekend. And they still have, the wife has the account she had when she first started working. The husband still has his account when he first started working. Yep. They got this trust they've never put anything in. They don't have a healthcare power of attorney. And they still have separate assets that are at risk from a legal perspective if something happens to somebody, right? It's crazy. Jay, final thoughts?
Yeah, just circling back to the staggering numbers on the disability. I think that's something that, me personally, I need to really start looking into more for my clients, of making sure that, hey, do we have a plan for that?
Right.
So I feel like we do a pretty good job of life insurance, but that's kind of my thing right there. Holy cow, those stats are crazy.
They are, and they're kind of scary.
Yeah.
Right. So again, we're not trying to freak everybody out, but there are risks to your financial blueprint beyond just portfolio risk or market risk. If any of these things caused you kind of concern or question, please pick up the phone, shoot us an email, use the text line that y'all have access to. If you're kind of worried about any of your friends or family in terms of some of these issues, please feel free to share the podcast link with them, and we're happy to talk to them and help them with whatever these things are concerning them. So until next time, appreciate you guys listening, and we'll be closer to first place. I have a strong feeling in July. So take care.